The red moon hung low over the dusty plains of Jarenth, casting eerie light over the craggy terrain. Wind blew sharp across the abandoned mining outpost, rusted panels creaking like old bones. Darren Holt adjusted the strap on his toolpack, squinting into the distance. The outpost wasn't on his route, but something had pinged his motion scanner, movement that didn't belong. Out here, that usually meant one of two things: a smuggler looking to hide or something a lot worse. He crouched near the edge of a collapsed processing bay and brushed a hand over the scorched metal. Faint footprints, heavier than human. Definitely armored. He drew a long breath and exhaled slowly. Not worth getting involved, not really. He wasn't military anymore. He was a soil tech. Terraforming was his job now, not chasing ghosts. Still, a voice barked out behind him, sharp and crackling with command. Turn around. Hands visible. Darren didn't flinch. He stood, slowly, hands up and open. The voice belonged to someone who expected obedience. But he'd been given orders before. He just didn't follow them blindly anymore. He turned and blinked. She stood nearly 8 feet tall in obsidian blue armor, silver insignia glowing faintly on her breastplate. Her skin was violet and ridged, like polished scales, and her eyes, amber and slitted, shone with contempt. She looked like a goddess carved from war itself. A Virexi enforcer. And not just any, this one had a reputation, though her name escaped him in the moment. She was known for brutality, for disarming warlords with her bare hands, and for laughing at their final screams. She wasn't laughing now. "You're the one hiding," she said, stepping forward. "Virexi Intel has you marked as a fugitive. Name, Darren Holt." "I'm not hiding," Darren replied calmly. "And I'm not a fugitive. This is a false ping. I maintain the water scrubbers in this zone." She narrowed her eyes and sniffed, quite literally. "You smell like deceit." He almost smiled. "That's probably the sulfur vents." Without warning, she launched forward, faster than any armored figure should move. Her right fist came in like a meteor toward his abdomen. Darren had half a second to brace before it connected. There was a dull crack. She staggered backward. He didn't move. Pain flickered across her face, not from a counterattack, but from her own strike. She looked down at her gauntlet, then removed it. Her hand was already swelling. Several fingers hung at unnatural angles. "You," she breathed, "are not what you appear." Darren tilted his head. "You tried to punch through my stomach. I should be the one offended." Her eyes flared. She cut herself off and activated a wrist control with her uninjured hand. A field generator hummed to life around Darren. He felt the chill of ion bonds snap against his wrists. "I'll get the truth out of you soon enough," she said tightly. "You're coming with me." The holding cell smelled faintly of ozone and old metal. Darren sat on the bench, hands still bound, his back resting against the cool wall. Through the shimmering energy field, he could see her pacing outside, cradling her injured hand. She was muttering something in her native tongue, a language of sharp clicks and reverberating tones. He studied her openly. She moved like someone used to being feared, proud, tense, beautiful in a dangerous way, like a blade balanced on the edge of reason. She turned suddenly. "Stop staring. You broke your hand on me. You can't expect me not to be curious." She snarled, and his restraints tightened briefly in response to her command. Darren winced slightly but didn't stop smiling. "You're not afraid of me?" she asked, narrowing her eyes. "No. You should be. I've killed warlords for less resistance." "Did they let you punch them first?" Her lips curled into something like a grin, but there was no amusement in it. "You're trying to be clever. It won't save you." "Wasn't trying to be saved," he replied. "Just wondering how long before you realize you've made a mistake." She walked up to the energy barrier and leaned close. "Mistake or not, you're mine until my ship scans the registry. If your name's not on any list, I'll release you. And if it is?" Her voice dropped. "Then I decide what happens next." They stared at each other in silence for a few heartbeats. Darren's pulse didn't quicken. Her gaze searched his, looking for weakness. All she found was patience. She looked away first. Later that night, a tremor shook the outpost. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Thalexa. Darren had finally remembered her name, snapped to attention. A warning light flashed red on her datapad. Unauthorized perimeter breach. She activated her HUD. 3 lifeforms, armed, moving fast. Stay here, she ordered. I'm in a cell, Darren replied. Where exactly would I go? She ignored him and stormed out of the security room, her injured hand bound tightly with synthwrap. With her free hand, she unslung a plasma rifle and moved into the corridor. The first blast came from behind. The wall exploded inward. Thalexa dove sideways, rolling beneath a spray of stone and glass. 3 figures entered, 2 humans, 1 possibly augmented. Smugglers, heavily armed. Definitely not here by accident. You have something that belongs to us, one of them growled. Do I? Thalexa snarled, raising her rifle. Which of your lungs do you want to keep? Gunfire erupted. She ducked, fired, rolled. But her hand slowed her. Every movement of her right side was half a second too late. One of the attackers clipped her leg. She stumbled. Another charged. A crash echoed down the corridor. Then came silence. And then laughter. Thalexa blinked, dazed, as the last attacker flew through the air and crashed into a support beam with a sickening thud. She turned and saw Darren, cuffs broken, standing over the unconscious body of the smuggler he just hurled like garbage. Your shield field was shorting out from the blast, he said calmly. I walked out. She stared at him. You broke Virexi-grade restraints? He rubbed his wrists. Never fit me right anyway. She struggled to her feet, half limping. Why help me? Because I'm not your enemy. And you looked like you could use a hand. Don't mock me. I'm serious. He stepped past her, offering an arm. Come on. You're wounded. She hesitated, then slowly accepted his help. His touch was gentle but firm, and his body radiated warmth. As they made their way back to the security room, she said, I don't understand you. He chuckled. You tried to arrest me, broke your hand in the process. Then I saved you. Exactly. He looked at her. Maybe we should start over. Thalexa Rune. Darren Holt. They walked on in silence, the warmth of his arm against her skin more troubling than any injury she'd taken that day. The smuggler corpses were removed the next morning. Thalexa reported them as unrelated hostiles, nothing to do with Darren. He watched her file the report with a mix of curiosity and quiet admiration. You didn't mention me. No, she said flatly, because I don't know what you are yet. I'm a man with good abs and a surprisingly useful punch, he said with a wink. She glared at him. You enjoy this too much. I do. Watching you realize humans aren't as soft as you thought? Priceless. She stood, tense and unreadable for a long moment. Then, almost too quietly to hear, she muttered, You're not like the others. Neither are you, he replied. Their eyes locked again. Something shifted. A thread of tension, once rooted in suspicion and pride, now twisted with something else. Something unspoken. Something that neither one of them, soldier or settler, entirely understood. Not yet, but it had begun. The ride across the wastelands in Thalexa's gunship was bumpy and loud, but Darren didn't seem to mind. He sat in the passenger seat with a half-smirk tugging at his lips, arms folded over his chest like he'd just been offered a scenic tour and not an armed escort to a military base. Thalexa hadn't said much since liftoff. She sat stiffly, one hand on the controls, the other in a synth-wrap brace. She didn't acknowledge him often, save for the occasional glare whenever he leaned a little too close to the viewport or asked something annoying. Like now. So, Darren said over the comms, do all Virexi soldiers keep punching prisoners? Or was that just a special moment we shared? You were not a prisoner. You were an unidentified anomaly, she snapped. He nodded, mock serious. Ah yes, I forgot how tender Virexi classifications can be. She didn't respond, but her knuckles whitened around the yoke. He chuckled, sitting back. The ship trembled as they descended toward Outpost Trax 7, a forward base near the tectonic line where terraformers and security teams monitored seismic activity. It was Spartan, bare rock, matte gray walls, guard towers, and very little in the way of charm. But it had scanners, records, and answers. If Alexa wanted to figure out what Darren Holt really was, this was where she'd start. As they landed, a pair of Virexi sentries approached, one of them glancing at Darren with undisguised curiosity. Humans rarely came this far into sovereign Virexi territory without permits or an armed convoy. The fact that Thalexa brought one personally caused more than a few raised crests and whispered conversations. Darren stepped off the ship and stretched. The sun was harsh overhead, and the wind whipped around him like a living thing. He looked over at Thalexa as she disembarked, walking a bit too quickly for someone with an injured leg. You walk like you're trying to ignore your own pain. She didn't even turn. Discipline requires denying weakness, or it just delays healing. Humans pamper themselves, she said. Virexi endure. And how's that working for your hand? She stopped. Her eyes flicked to him, unreadable. You're going to test me at every opportunity, aren't you? Only to see how long you'll last. She looked at him long enough that he wasn't sure if she was about to hit him again, or laugh. Instead, she kept walking. Inside the outpost, things were even more tense. Technicians stared. Warriors halted their drills to glance at the human following their enforcer around like an unofficial escort. Darren, to his credit, seemed unfazed. He even offered a polite nod to a Virexi officer who looked ready to skewer him with a vibrosphere. In the command chamber, Thalexa pulled up records. Her fingers moved efficiently over the control surface, despite the stiffness in her hand. She didn't complain, didn't hesitate, but Darren could see the tiny winces. He said nothing. The system buzzed as it ran its scan. Darren leaned against the wall. So, what happens if my name still doesn't come up? Thalexa didn't answer. You keep me around for more punching sessions? I let you go. He raised an eyebrow. Just like that. She nodded. We made a deal. That surprised him. Ha! Honor-bound after all. She looked at him. Of course. Why wouldn't I be? He smiled slightly. You'd be surprised how many say they are. But it only lasts until convenience kicks in. The scanner chimed. Search. Darren Holt. Result. No active warrants. Civilian registry flagged as non-standard augmented. Unconfirmed. Thalexa frowned. Non-standard. Darren sighed. Yeah, it's a polite way of saying they don't know what the hell I am. Something happened during a collapse years ago. Radiation, nanotech exposure, no one could figure it out. I healed too fast, didn't scan right. They eventually gave up. Why didn't you explain this before? You had a gun. I didn't feel like giving a lecture on genetic anomalies. Thalexa closed the screen and turned to face him. You're not a criminal. Nope. Not a spy. Nope. Then why are you really here? He looked at her for a long time, and his tone softened. Because I was tired of people trying to fix me. That silenced her more effectively than any retort could have. She looked away, jaw tight. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then came the alert. External breach, Sector 9. Unnatural seismic anomaly. Asterisk asterisk. Thalexa shot up. Get to the comms center. Now. Darren followed her without hesitation. As they arrived at the upper deck, the floor trembled beneath them. Several officers scrambled to triangulate the epicenter of the anomaly. A display showed fissures forming along a nearby ridge. It's too precise, one tech said. That's not a quake. Someone's destabilizing the crust deliberately. Alexa's face hardened. Saboteurs. Wait, Darren said, stepping closer. That spot, those vents. That's where the smuggler I knocked out had a locator chip. Alexa stared at him. Are you sure? I recognized the terrain when your map popped up. He was trying to lead something to you. Alexa turned to her officers. Gear up. Recon team, follow me. Then she looked at Darren. He waited for her to say, stay behind. Instead, she said, come with me. He blinked. Really? You know the terrain. And you fight better than most of my squad. Darren nodded. Let me grab something heavier than a wrench. Hours later, they moved through the blackened rock paths near the vent fields. Geysers hissed in the distance, steam swirling against the blood-red sky. The squad fanned out, rifles ready. Darren walked beside Thalexa, dressed in salvaged armor that didn't quite fit but would do in a pinch. You don't talk much when you're focused, he whispered. She kept her eyes forward. Distraction kills, right? So no jokes while under fire. None. He grinned. That's gonna be rough. They approached a fissure. Something about it looked wrong, too symmetrical. Thalexa crouched, running her scanner along the edges. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shook. Figures burst from the fissure, masked, armored, and fast. Thalexa shot two before they landed. Darren moved like a boulder in motion, brutal, fast, and terrifying. He caught a blade mid-swing with one hand, yanked the attacker forward, and slammed him into the rock wall. Virexi soldiers spread out, firing precise bursts. But the enemy was coordinated and more kept coming. One assailant hurled a mine toward Thalexa. She didn't see it. Darren did. He tackled her just as it exploded. They rolled, dust and fire erupting around them. When they stopped, Thalexa was on top of him, her eyes wide. You protected me. He coughed, grinning through soot. Didn't think you'd appreciate a second broken hand. She looked down at him, frozen for a beat too long. Then she stood and pulled him up. Around them, the battle was nearly over. Virexi warriors had pushed the attackers back, securing the ridge. Back at the base, Thalexa sat in the medbay while Darren stood nearby, arms crossed. The medic examined her, then said something in Virexi, then left them alone. Darren gave her a look. So what did he say? She hesitated. Then, he said I should avoid stress, emotional or otherwise. Why? She glanced at him. Because my heart rate spiked in combat. He took a slow step forward. Was it the fight? Thalexa didn't answer. He was close now, close enough to hear her breathing. She didn't move away. I've never met anyone like you, she said quietly. Same, he replied. Her hand brushed his just once. Contact that didn't last. But it left an electric trail behind. Neither of them said anything else. But something had changed. Something was growing. The outpost had gone silent. Not just quiet, *silent star. No drills. No patrol chatter. No technicians rushing between stations. It was the silence of something held in a collective breath. Waiting for something. And at the center of it, Thalexa stood in full command armor, looking out over the deep rift sensor feeds that showed nothing. Absolutely nothing. Darren had vanished. It had happened during a routine recon mission 3 days ago. They were investigating a second ridge breach, supposedly another sabotage site, but something was off from the start. Darren had caught the scent first, noting how the ground trembled in uneven pulses, like footsteps from something deep underground. He told Thalexa to fall back, but she refused. Then the quake hit, and when the dust cleared, he was gone. No body, no blood, just a deep crevice that led straight down into blackness. Thalexa had clawed at the edge until her knuckles bled, until her damaged hand spasmed and she collapsed against the rocks screaming orders to her team. They'd descended drones, scanned every inch. Still nothing. The others were beginning to whisper. Some believed he had fled. Others said he'd been claimed by the fault wraiths, creatures of myth that were said to steal away those who didn't belong. But Thalexa didn't believe either. She felt he was alive. The medic who had treated her hand a week ago tried to speak with her gently, told her humans were resilient but not immortal, that her emotions, still so alien to most Virexi, were clouding her judgment. She nearly punched him, but she didn't, because Darren wouldn't have wanted that. He had a way of softening her rage just by standing there. Sometimes by mocking her, other times by saying nothing and letting the silence do all the work. And now that silence ached like a wound. On the 4th day, a report came in. A transmission, intermittent, garbled. Not Virexi, not standard Terran either. but a single phrase repeated, distorted by static. "Get her out. They're using me." Alexa bolted to the command deck. "Where did this originate?" she demanded. The comms officer flinched under her intensity. "Subsurface. 9 kilometers beneath the failed ridgeline." 9? "Impossible depth, Commander." No, her voice was low. Not impossible. Just inconvenient. She called for her armor. Within 2 hours, she stood atop the fissure again. This time with a reinforced dive rig, seismic shielding, and a plan that none of her advisors supported. "This is a death run," her lieutenant warned. "Even if he's alive, you don't know what else is down there." Alexa stared into the abyss. "He'd come for me." Then she stepped off the edge. The descent was brutal. Heat flared from the sides like the breath of an ancient beast. Her suit's HUD flickered as magnetic interference messed with her readings. Somewhere below, tremors shifted like something alive moved beneath the crust. And through it all, she followed the faint ping of a human biosignature, weak, flickering but constant. She hit the bottom hard, rolling against a rocky ledge. Her HUD screamed about pressure and temperature, but she silenced the alarms and moved forward, rifle raised. What she found was not a cavern. It was a chamber, walls etched in strange, semi-organic patterns, structures that pulsed faintly, humming with energy. At the center, Darren lay half-conscious, bound in biofilm, strange tendrils connected to his chest and limbs, feeding pulses into his body like they were trying to decode him. When she approached, his eyes fluttered open. "Lex," he rasped. Her breath caught. "Who did this?" He gave a weak laugh. "Old things. Buried. Not dead. Using me to study human anomalies. I guess I'm an interesting subject." She raised her rifle. The tendrils reacted, shooting out like spears. She dodged, fired, blew them apart. The chamber screamed. The very rock vibrated in protest. She reached him and ripped the restraints off, pulling him into her arms. "You came," he murmured, still dazed. "You shouldn't be surprised." "I'm not. Just impressed." She smirked, though it was strained. "Even after I broke my hand on your abs?" He gave a broken chuckle. "Still my proudest moment." Then the ground shook again. Asterisk violently star. "We have to go," she growled, slinging his arm over her shoulder. But the walls didn't want them to leave. More tendrils rose, and this time they weren't probing, they were attacking. Alexa ran, dodging blasts of bioenergy, leaping across collapsing ledges. She shielded Darren with her own body as the chamber caved in behind them. By the time they reached the extraction rig's beacon, the sky above was a tiny pinpoint. She triggered the recall tether. A rope shot down, snagging her harness. The lift engaged, pulling them both up. Halfway to the surface, the rig jerked, something below trying to pull them back. Darren stirred. "Cut me loose. You'll make it if I'm not." "Shut up. Lex. You think I came this far to leave you now?" Her voice was sharp, filled with fury and something else. Desperation. "Don't insult me like that." He looked at her. "Why?" She met his gaze. "Because I can't breathe without knowing you're somewhere on this world. Because you made me feel like I'm more than just a soldier. Because I think I—" She stopped, but he saw it, felt it. His hand brushed hers. Then the rig broke the surface, and they were surrounded by soldiers and medics. Darren passed out seconds later, but not before hearing her whisper, "You're mine, Darren Holt, and I don't let go." They let him rest for 3 days. The medics said his nervous system had been overclocked by the alien biotendrils. His muscles spasmed in his sleep, and his body leaked strange residual energy they'd never seen before. But his vitals were strong. Stronger than any human should have had, really. It was Darren Holt, though. Alexa wasn't surprised. Just angry. At him. At herself. At how damn close it had all come to ending. When he finally opened his eyes in the medical wing, blinking against the low glow of filtered lights, she was already sitting beside him. One leg folded under her, hands steepled under her chin, staring at him like he'd stolen something. "You could have died." Good morning to you too, he croaked, voice rasping. No flowers? Not even a hug. She stood, walked toward him. Her gait was precise, controlled. Too precise. I told you not to go into that ridge without a proper scan. You disobeyed again. That was reckless. His lip twitched. I saved your life, remember? I shoved you out of the blast radius. And then fell in yourself. Details. She leaned over him then. Her gaze was fire and steel, and beneath it, something deeper. Terror wearing the face of fury. You think you're invincible, but you're not. You're not allowed to be gone. Not from me. He looked up at her, the faintest smile touching his lips. So you do care. Her voice dipped to a whisper. I would have torn the planet apart to find you. I almost did. Silence hung thick between them. Then, finally, he reached up, winced, and cupped the side of her face. She didn't flinch this time. I heard your voice in that place, he murmured. When it got too much, I kept thinking about the way you looked at me. Right before we hit that drop zone 2 weeks ago. You thought I didn't notice. But I did. Her lips parted slightly. You thought I looked brave. I saw it in your eyes. You were brave. And so were you, he whispered. She closed her eyes, leaning into his palm. For a long moment there were no titles. No alien, no human. Just two people caught in something neither quite understood but both needed desperately. Later that day, when he'd recovered enough to walk with assistance, Thalexa escorted him to the observation deck. The outpost loomed over the ridges, dawn painting the horizon in molten golds and soft reds. The atmosphere shimmered faintly. Darren leaned on the railing beside her, arms still sore, ribs bound, but standing. Place looks different when you're not dodging death every 5 minutes, he said quietly. Thalexa gave a soft snort. It does. Any word from below? The chamber collapsed entirely. It's gone. We think the energy source either dissipated or reburied itself. He nodded slowly, then turned toward her. So what now? She tilted her head. You tell me. Darren hesitated. I've been thinking. When I signed up for this mission, it was to study alien tectonics. Chart mineral flows. Boring stuff. I didn't expect. You. Her eyes didn't leave his. And now that you've found me? A smile crept across his face, slow and sure. Now I want to stay. She blinked. The words hit harder than any strike. I thought you might say that, she murmured. He reached into his coat, now a bit ragged from his ordeal, and pulled something small and metal from the inner pocket. A little charm, fashioned from Virexi crystal. Their bonding symbol, jagged at the edges, beautiful in its way. He'd carved it himself sometime during the last month. I don't know what this means in your culture. I probably did it wrong. But, he paused. Will you stay with me, Thalexa? Not just as my commander, or my guardian, or my punchline. She took it in her hands, examined the piece. It was rough, yes, but honest, much like him. She exhaled softly, a sound close to a laugh and a sob. In our culture, that symbol is reserved for the most sacred bonds. It's not something we give easily. She looked up at him. I accept. He blinked. Really? She stepped close, nearly chest to chest with him. Her hand touched his ribs, not roughly, not testing him this time. Just feeling the warmth beneath. Just don't make me punch you again. You humans may be tougher than you look, but I only have so many hands. He grinned, then paused, brows arching playfully. So wait, just to confirm, you're officially mine now. She raised an eyebrow. Am I? I mean, he said, voice dropping in mock seriousness. You did descend 9 kilometers into a collapsing abyss to save me. Yes. You cradled me in your arms like a swooning heroine. She glared. You were very emotional. Human, she growled. And now you're holding the bonding charm like it's a sacred vow. She looked him in the eye. It is. He blinked, then nodded, the joking melting away. Then I'm yours too. They stood there together, the sun rising behind them. Not a word spoken after that. They didn't need to. Whatever strange, broken universe had conspired to bring a snarky, steel-bodied Terran geologist and an elite, duty-bound Virexi soldier together, it had done so for a reason. They were bonded now not just by proximity or shared danger, but by something far rarer, choice, and that, as it turned out, was stronger than any force in the galaxy.